What's good, everybody? Hello and welcome back to Against the Fence, where you know this is the place to be if you're obsessed and passionate about the sport of mixed martial arts and the UFC. Now, today's special guest is for those people who are casuals in the game, or if you've just recently watched the sport in the last few years, you might know this guy as somebody, as an expert analyst, where the UFC broadcast team or John Anik will say, Din Thomas, what have you got? And then Dean's like, well, John Anik, this happened. So Dean is that expert analysis who works with ESPN and the UFC. But for those hardcores, we'll know him as a former UFC fighter with a professional, retired back in 2014 with a professional record, 26 wins and 9 losses. And after retiring, he's established himself as a coach and an expert analyst. Din, how you doing, my man? Thanks for coming on to the show.
I'm good, man, and I'm glad you clarified that because a lot of people, no, it's real, man. There's people who are always kind of like, oh man, it's Dean Thomas, and he fought before, really, and I recognize that. Like the new people now only know me as the guy whose picture pops up on the screen of the pay-per-views and talks to John Anik and Joe Rogan and those guys. Like that's what new people know me as, or they may know me as like Dana White's buddy who hangs out with Dana White, doing Dana White looking for a fight. But at heart, man, at heart, I'm a fighter. Like at heart, I'm a fighter. I speak the language of fighters. So I can do both, man. Get you a man that can do both.
That's it. And the work never stops over here as well. I want to get to fence, and of course, where you are as well. Welcome on in, Breezy. Welcome on in, Aaron. What a legend, says Ash. Yeah, can't wait to get into your questions. So make sure you've got them typed in the chats. We'll move on to that segment in just a sec. So I've got a few of my own that we want to get into. Now, you left American Top Team in 2020 to open up your own gym because you felt that the timing was right for you to move on and you wanted to be around a smaller circle of fighters. You had a plan to allow yourself to flourish as a coach. Now, reflection is a big thing. And looking back, would you say you're satisfied with the execution of that plan? And if so, what's been the main challenge for you in that time?
But that's not how life works, man. Is it like you have a plan, right? And you want to have a plan, but you want to be flexible with that plan on the outcome of what happens with that plan. So my plan, I left American Top Team right during COVID. Like I had a stable job with American Top Team, and during COVID, I was actually training Tyron Woodley to fight Leon Edwards. And we were in camp, and I just had this epiphany that I no longer wanted to work in a big room anymore. I was like, I'm tired of working in big gyms. I only want to work with a few select fighters. So I figured that I'm just going to leave American Top Team and just focus on a few select fighters. Um, and when I did that, I actually rented out a house. It was during COVID. I rented out a house, transformed the garage into a little gym area for me to work with fighters. I ended up moving a couple fighters in the house, Shorty Torres and David Evans, and then Jillian Robertson moved right down the street. So we'd work every day. We worked every day for 2 years during COVID. And then I realized that coaching fighters was probably something I didn't really want to do, like full time. And miraculously, the fact that I left American Top Team, it just opened up doors, like more so than like me executing the plan of being a full-time coach for certain fighters. It opened up the doors and for opportunities for me in broadcasting and analyst work. I ended up getting a job with the UFC. I ended up getting a job with ESPN. I ended up getting a job with Sirius XM Radio. And so the idea was like the execution of me being a coach to like a few people. I still do that. I still work with like Sean Brady, Aljamain Sterling, Jillian Robertson. I still work with a couple people, but being a full-time coach, when I thought that was what I wanted, it wasn't really what I wanted. I just wanted more opportunity to do other things. And that execution was perfect. In terms of being a coach, it didn't work out, but it worked out better because now I have a lot more freedom, a lot more opportunities, and job stability. I think in a way, for as much as job stability can be in this industry, like I have job stability working with the largest organization in the world.
It's crazy what doors do open up, when you make those kind of life adjustments, really. I mean, anything can kind of come at you. And I mean, you've been recently working with Aljo, haven't
Mhm.
you? Or have you been working for some time? Am I
Yeah, so
saying that?
I've been working. I mean, we've worked a little bit. I started working with him just, as he bounces around. It's not easy for fighters to always make the right decisions. These guys go from camp to camp trying to find the right thing. And Aljo's at the tail end of his career, and he's like, "Yo, I just need to learn a little bit more. Like I've been fighting my whole career. These guys have figured me out. I need to make sure that I'm sharp." And so he's, working with Eric Nixick more on a daily basis. He kind of bounces around. But then he asked me, "Yo, help, like, what do you think I can do differently?" So, um, I don't live in the same area as him. Like we watch film together. I study his sparring, me and a couple guys. We study his sparring. We talk about, and he's at the level of experience where he can do this. Like I would never do this with like a beginner fighter, but he's at the level now where we can talk over Zoom or WhatsApp about his sparring, and he can make these adjustments, come back and bring it to me again, and then and that's how we work. Like we really just talk about his sparring or his or drills that he should be doing in order to get better at certain things. And we have a little group together that really helps him out. And I want to see him become a champion at featherweight. So I think it's a good time for him actually.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you said he's sort of on the tail end of his career, but he's definitely still got potential to go and disrupt things in the featherweight division. And the featherweight division has kind of really opened up as of recent, with Ilia Topuria becoming the champion, of course, and Max Holloway kind of bouncing around now between lightweight and featherweight. So there's a lot there. Um, Now, you've coached many fighters over the last few years, including amateurs, seasonal pros, and champions like Tyron Woodley and Amanda Nunes. Now, is there any fighter, past or present, you wish you could have coached or could still coach?
Um, there was a time where I really wanted to work with Corey Sandhagen. Yeah. He's got a great mind, a great work ethic. I really thought there was some things that I could have brought to the table for him and changed his perspective on some things. But one thing I'll never do is I'll never try to convince a fighter that
Mm,
I know better, because fighters have their own. Again, I speak the language, man. I know I was one for a very long time, and when they're stuck on something, that's what they believe, and it may be true. It is true for them, and that's and in fighting, like, because it comes down to these very specific moments. Like your belief in whatever it is that you believe has to be real to you, and it doesn't matter if it works or not. It has to be real to you, because in the moment where you need it, and if you don't believe in it, it's not going to work. And certain things, I see. If I This is the reason why a guy like Dricus Du Plessis is so successful. Like on the outside, everybody looks at him and goes, "Oh, he's so sloppy. He's not very technical." I don't believe that. He's a little stiff. Like he can't dance. You know what I'm saying? Like if he was at the
mm.
club, I don't trust him to be able to dance with the best of them. But he believes in what he's doing so much that it's very effective because he believes in it. And so when I'm working with fighters, I'll never try to convince them to do anything. Me and Corey have spoken a bit, but there's some things that I think that we may not have the same ideas on, and that's fine too. Like that's fine. And I wish him luck with the rest of his career. So, but he's a guy that I always kind of wanted to work with, though.
Yeah, I mean, and because he recently started doing work with Trevor Whitman as well, didn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah.
Um, and sadly he fell short against Umar. Big test, but I thought he handled Umar pretty well at times in that fight, and it was pretty close. Um, but do you think that perhaps then fighters bouncing between different MMA coaches can kind of harm their careers in a way?
That's such a
Yeah.
it's a very general thing to say,
Mm,
like bouncing around. At some level, this game is dictated by information.
mm.
It's always been. And the more information you have that you can apply to your game, the better. The better you're going to be. The more. not the more information that you have, but the more information that you have that you can apply to your game, that you can believe in, the better. And sometimes when you're with the same team for too long, you're no longer getting information.
Mm.
And then you fall behind. And then now you're forced to try to make up for stuff. And then then it's too late and you're older and now you can't come back from that. So it's always, it's always these very little things that you have to do along your career and make good decisions at the right time. And I have no problem. Like I tell my fighters all the time, if you can learn some information from somewhere, a new trick, a new way of doing something, a new idea that's going to help your game, find it. Because if I don't have it, if I don't have it and I stop you from going out and get it, I'm ruining your career. I'm going to ruin
Mm.
your career if there's stuff out there that you need to learn that I can't give it to you. So I'm always open to new ideas, new suggestions. I talk to all the coaches in the game, Eric Nixick, all of them. We always kind of bounce ideas off of each other. We're all cool with each other. The fighters hate each other, but all us coaches love each other.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, the reason why I kind of asked that question, we wasn't really on my schedule, is because I was listening to the last time that you and Matt Serra went on JRE, and there was a bit of conversation about fighters being kind of loyal to their camp that kind of got them to the dance, and and that kind of gray area really. And I guess it's never really a winning debate really what a fighter should do.
It's not. But the problem, see, it's tough
Mhm.
because no one, they don't know, a lot of fighters don't really do it right. Fighters get into fighting because it's their way of communicating. They communicate better with their hands and their feet. They're not really good communicators vocally, which is why there's like three guys in the UFC that know how to get on a mic and speak well, right? The rest of them are just like, ah, so they don't really communicate well, and they certainly don't communicate well with their coaches. And then when they get with their coaches, and if there's an issue, they just pick up and leave, and they don't. And it'd be one thing. And I always tell fighters this, man. Like if you're going to get information from other coaches or other people, pay them, pay them. Just give them whatever their private rate is, whatever their private lesson rate is, pay them.
Yeah.
If I come to you and you're teaching me some fighting stuff and your private lesson rate is $200, I can pick up and leave. That transaction is done. I gave you what you wanted. You gave me some information. I gave you some money. I don't owe you nothing.
Mm.
But the problem is fighters, they go to these camps, they go to these coaches, they get a bunch of free work, they use them for their information and knowledge, and then they're just like, all right, man, peace.
Mm.
That's the problem. It's not, I don't think that's wrong. And that's wrong. I always say, man, listen, you go somewhere, you either, if you go to like a new gym or something, you either give back somehow by sparring with the guys or teach them some stuff, but don't just go and take from a camp or
No.
a coach and then just leave, because then you doing the wrong thing. You got to give back, and a lot of fighters don't give back, and that's where the issue comes with, like, especially like old school coaches like Matt Serra, Ray Longo, those guys, man, they will not put up with that, man. Whew, they will not put up
Yeah.
with that.
And it's a bit, yeah, and obviously you got the business end of it as well, which is a whole new category. You kind of want your stars to stick around in that same gym so that other people can be inspired and be like, yeah, I get to, train with Aljamain Sterling or Tyron Woodley, whoever, in the same room as them, and they feed off of that energy. And when that energy kind of moves on a little bit, you need substitute. It's got
Well,
to
yeah,
come from somewhere.
no doubt, man. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
Like if you got some stars in there and the stars aren't happy and they end up leaving, people start looking around like, yo, what did you do?
Mm.
How did you ruin the energy of the room? So yeah,
Mm.
you got to be careful with that. That's why I believe in this. Like if I have a gym, like if I had a very specific, like I did this the other day. Like I go down to the Goat Shed in Miami, and I brought my guy Dorian Price in there, who is to me the best elbow guy in the world. I brought him in to give these guys some lessons on elbows because they needed that information. Now, they probably couldn't go to him because he's all over the world training with different people. So as a coach, I brought him to them. And then more coaches need to do that. More coaches need to go out and go, all right, who's the best guillotine guy in the world? We're going to bring him in so that we can learn how he executes his guillotine. Who got the best footlocks in the world? We need to bring him in so when we're in this position, we need to know how to finish this. But a lot of coaches are very like, we gotta. I'm stubborn. I know how to do this, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, yeah. That's what one thing that I admired GSP. Well, GSP became a massive influence to me in when I was a much younger. Really, is the fact that he was bringing in those specialists to advocate whatever opponent that he had in play, if they were, a guillotine specialist or anything like that. Or to that level, that was the level that he kind of the bar that he'd put for himself in terms of his preparation. And it's crazy because I thought, from that, more fighters would kind of have that level of inspiration from that. But now it's kind of like, oh, I know what's, or not quite, I know, like, I know what's best, but like fighters kind of know what they're good at and then they kind of stick to what they know, if you know what I mean.
Well,
You
that's
see where I'm
exactly
coming
what it
from
is.
that?
No, you had. I think you had it right the first time. It's
Yeah.
I know what's best. It's I know what's best, and they don't fight often enough to realize that what they think they know is not best.
Mm.
That's the problem. Like if fighters fought, 6 times a year, then you can learn in a year, and records weren't that important. Then they would learn in a year that okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong. It's just these guys don't get an opportunity to fight and lose enough to realize that what
Mm.
they're doing is wrong. And by the time they realize it, they're 3 years behind, and you can't make up those 3 years. But you're right. GSP was the first guy. Think about this. GSP had, and this was, uh, you know, a decade ago. He had Faraz Sahabi, Greg Jackson, John Danaher. Like, think about the
Yeah.
level of mastery he had teaching him in his corner. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And fighters don't have that access. Fighters
No.
don't, and or nor do they have the money to do it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
so you got to
George
so
was just like the amount of money he was putting in on himself
yeah,
was
yeah.
just to get to that level was just insane.
I could only imagine. We
Investment.
don't oftentimes think about that, but all those guys had to get paid, and GSP clearly he never burned a like you never hear a bad thing about him in the industry. So he's got good relationships still with people. So he did it right. GSP did it right. There's a couple of guys who I think did it right, and there's a couple of guys who are just like, oh, get this guy away from me.
Mm. Yeah. All right. Moving on then. Thanks for your guys' patience in the chats. We will get to your questions in due course. One thing I wanted to ask you is somebody who's been close to the women's GOAT, Amanda Nunes. Do you believe she'll ever come out of retirement to fight again? Because she's teased fans on social media shortly after UFC 307. We also had Juliana Pena coming out this week saying that she thinks the UFC are putting her together against Harrison, and then Amanda Nunes will fight the winner of them two. What do you think is going to happen?
I do think so, but I think it has to happen fast. Luckily, we're in the women's division where the action, quote unquote, should move faster. We're not dealing with men's welterweight where it's like, okay, Colby Covington's holding up a division, or these guys are holding up divisions. We're dealing with women's bantamweight that has been so stale for so many years that the world right now is clamoring for some movement in the division. Now, if I didn't think that, I think that Amanda's probably going to fight between now and the summer or never again. So
Oh.
that's the way I think about it because when you're a fighter, you either want to fight or you don't. Like it's very clear. Like because fighting is not just showing up the day of. It's like going through camp and there's a lot of stuff that you have to go through. And it's like, do you really want to commit to that if you're not really a fighter? Like there's no way that a man is gonna be like, well, I'm gonna wait for this fight, then I'm gonna wait for that fight, and then I'm gonna see. Like if she's doing that, then I would tell you, she's not gonna fight because yeah. Like if it takes a year for this whole division to kind of settle itself down and Kayla Harrison becomes champ, and then Amanda goes, all right, now I'm gonna come back and fight. That's not happening. I think that there's got to be some movement going on to where they make a decision on whether Amanda's going to fight Juliana Pena or Kayla Harrison, and it has to be before the summer and give her a date so there's something that she could be motivated for. and then move on because she's not trying to start over and she's not trying to wait around. You're not going to wait around to see what happens. Like you either going to start getting in camp now or not. So I think she will. I think that there's enough intrigue between Juliana Pena and Kayla Harrison for her to, and enough hatred in her heart for both of them that she probably want to come out and prove a point.
Yeah. Yeah. From a UFC standpoint, though, do you think that they are trying to make the stars align for a Nunes versus Harrison fight? Because that was like the fight they were trying to get paired up originally 2 years ago or so, and then Amanda lost to Juliana, wasn't it? And that kind of all, you know, fell
Yeah,
through. You could tell from the Harrison's face after that fight, you know.
well, the UFC is all about making the fights happen that are most interesting, and that is the most interesting fight. And I could imagine that will be what the UFC is trying to do. I mean, listen, they waited 2 years to make this John Jones Stipe fight happen, even though it's probably a waste of time, right? It's like we're like, oh my god, really, you gonna do this to Tom Aspinall? But it's to fight John Jones one. It's to fight Stipe, and the UFC was like, I guess we kind of owe it to these guys. I think that they are trying to make the stars align for Juliana or Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes. A couple of things have to happen. One thing that hurts the entire cause is Raquel Pennington. Now, if Raquel Pennington just sat back and was like, okay, I lost, no problem. I'll get back. Then it would be easy. The UFC would just be like, all right, Juliana Pena, Kayla Harrison, January, fight. But Raquel Pennington's like, I want this one. I want this one. I deserve to win. You did this to Sean Strickland. Da, 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 da. And it just kind of muddies the waters a little bit. So the UFC is going to have to deal with that, kind of settle that down a little bit. Well, listen, they did that to Bilal Muhammad. They made him wait a little bit. So I could imagine the UFC is going to eventually kind of put a muzzle on Raquel Pennington just so that they can get that Kayla Harrison fight.
Yeah, yeah. Crazy how the industry works, but it is what it is. You know, you got to put bums in seats, and you got to sell tickets at the end of the day, and that's just the way it is. In terms of like most anticipated fight of the year, do you think that Topuria versus Holloway is the one for this past year? Because I was looking at like the previous headliners the other day, and I was like, do you know what? I think this actually might be the most anticipated fight of the year.
Yeah, 100%. We're talking about Max Holloway, who is top three, if not number one, featherweight of all time. But he lost to Volkanovski, right? But then he comes back. He comes back and does work against some other guys. And then he beats up Justin Gaethje and gets the BMF belt. And all while Ilia Topuria is running around sneaking up wins and knocking guys out, and then knocks out Volkanovski. I mean, it's a very intriguing fight. We got two guys that are kind of hard to hate. I mean, Ilya sometimes comes off a little rough, hard to like, but
Yeah.
but Max Holloway is the darling of the UFC. Everybody loves him. He's the daddest man on the planet. And he's very good. And what he did to Justin Gaethje just warrants him, all the respect that he gets. But Ilia Topuria is so dangerous. We know it's easily the most anticipated fight of the year.
Yeah, I think purely because of the way it went. The Gaethje finish for Holloway is the best moment of the year, by far, without a doubt. And then on top of that, you've got Topuria, who beat Volk, who's arguably, in people's eyes, the greatest featherweight of all time. To some people. And even looking back at that fight, that was, I think, one of set the bar really in terms of most anticipated fights of the year. I don't think Jones and Stipe is gonna.
That's not even
hit
close.
that level. No.
That's honestly the Jones Stipe fight. That might not even be as anticipated as, and it's a rematch, Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. Like that, I think people might be looking more forward to that. I mean, you kind of want to watch the Jones Stipe fight just because we're watching history. It's almost like if you've Some people, some new fans probably never saw John Jones fight, or probably
No.
only saw him fight the one time against Cyril Gane. So, and I know a lot of new fans never saw Stipe fight. So it's such an older fight, and I wish it was done years ago. But and I would, or not do it at all. But I don't know.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think when it was originally scheduled last year, that was the most anticipated fight of last year. But now, because you've had the injury and it's drawn on and on and on, and then you got the whole sort of situation with Tom Aspinall, it's just kind of like, all right, we're so over this now. And I think the UFC are sort of starting to kind of notice that people are falling off of these fight ideas. Hence why they've moved on with Conor Chandler. I mean, look, we were meant to see that about 2 years ago.
I know.
So, a mix-up has got to happen, but it's not going to really happen for John Jones, is it? He's going to be stubborn. Jones is stubborn.
Oh, yeah, and there's no doubt about that. No, so here's what I think. Here's what I think John Jones is going to do, because, and if he's smart, this is what he does. Because you can cherry pick your legacy. And if you have the option to, you can cherry pick your legacy. George St. Pierre did it. He came back at middleweight and beat up on Michael Bisping because that was the easiest fight for him at middleweight. Like Yoel Romero had that title at the time. George
Yeah,
St. Pierre would have not come back for that fight.
I
Cherry
know.
pick his legacy. And I love George, but we all know that's what he did. But if I'm John Jones, I go out there and beat up Stipe, which he probably will do. He's probably going to finish Stipe. Come on, man. Stipe is 43 years old. He's going to finish him. Um, and then call out Alex Pereira. Get Alex
100%.
Pereira.
Please.
International Fight Week or something. Get Alex Pereira and at heavyweight and make it happen. And then ride off. Because if he were to beat Alex Pereira right now, as big as Alex Pereira is as a star, if he were to beat him right now, it would be undisputed where he cements himself in the history of MMA. Because he's already the greatest of all. They might even go ahead and erase the loss to Matt Hamill if he were to beat Alex Pereira.
It's enough, isn't
Yes,
it?
I think it's enough. So if I'm him, I'm doing that. I'm calling out Alex Pereira because he might be. He's one of two guys on the planet that could be Alex. That could beat Alex Pereira.
It is the biggest, potentially the biggest fight the UFC has ever made, stylistically anyway. I mean, when you look at those sort of mega godlike, should we say, matchups, we could have had Khabib versus GSP. That would have been another one where it's
Yeah,
just like boom, Whereas so much on the line with Jones versus Pereira. Pereira being a 3-time champ as well. That would be astronomical. No one would be able to get near that
yeah.
ever.
And what sucks about that again, same situation like Raquel Pennington. She's chirping for the fight here. Unfortunately, we got Tom Aspinall chirping.
Yeah,
He's gonna make it difficult for that to happen. That's what sucks about it. Is that Tom Aspinall? He deserves better. So I'm not gonna talk about him because he does deserve better. And
he does.
I do believe Tom Aspinall is the greatest heavyweight on the planet right now.
Yeah.
I believe that 100%. But sometimes, man, sometimes you gotta take one for the team, Tom. You gotta sit out about a year and let this MMA thing be great. Sit out for about
Yeah,
a year, let this MMA thing be great.
I'm all for that. As a Brit as well, and as somebody who's proper gunning for Aspinall to get that shot. But yeah, man, it is what it is. It is what it is. Greats have got to be great. All right. Okay, because we're cautious of timing a little bit, let's get to some fan questions. Much appreciate guys sticking around. We've got one from Aaron McNally who says, a question from Mr. Thomas. Does he have an idea of when the next Dana White looking for a fight episode is? Love the episodes and energy. You three, bring it.
So
Like that.
I wish I could speak more on this. Production companies are very tight-lipped. They don't like
Mm.
to do, and they don't like to announce anything. But I'll just say this, guys. We are scheduled to film in December. We're
Ooh, there you
scheduled to
go.
film another episode in December. That's all I can say. So As of right now, we're scheduled to film in December. Things can change. Dana White's life changes quickly. So, but as of
Does
right now, we are scheduled to film somewhere in December.
is that in the US?
Not in the US. And that's all I'm
Oh,
going to say. I can't say no more. It's not
I
in the
was gonna
US.
say, when's that going on the
Yeah,
road? But
it's
yeah,
not in the US, which is a good sign because if we're going on the road and not filming in the US, there's no telling what we won't do. So, and I appreciate the support. Keep supporting the show because we love to film the show, and the more support we get with the show, the more chances we get to film it.
absolutely. Thank you, Aaron, for your question. Top stuff. George Murray says, "JK, you're in the presence of greatness. Could have worn a clean shirt. You got dirt on it, mate. Man United, United, United. Silence the haters. Silence the haters. Question from John Breezy, who's texted me it instead of putting it in the chat because it's quite long. Who says, Dean, you've had an incredibly varied career from being a top level MMA fighter to coaching, broadcasting, and even acting. You had a role in Lauren Cass, which was
Oh my
quite a
God, Lauren
unique
Cass.
Lauren Crass, which was quite a unique and independent film. How did that opportunity come about, and what was your experience like transitioning into acting for a project like that?
Well, first, I didn't know anything about acting when I did that. It was just interesting to me, so I did it. They actually reached out to the man Dan Lambert, the guy who owns American Top Team, looking for a couple fighters to come out and film a few scenes for them, and I went out there and I filmed a few scenes. And shout out to Chris Fuller, who was the director of the film Lauren Cass, who was also still in the industry, still where he still works for ESPN. He's actually doing a documentary on the Gracie family right now, and they've been working on this thing for like 3 years. And I'm just so proud that this we filmed Lauren Cass in the early 2000s, and here he is still this many years later. We're still great friends, and we're still in the same industry together, running into each other. That's Chris Fuller, who was the director of Lauren Cass. But um, it was a good experience for me, and it got me in front of a camera, which is what I still love to do now. I'm still acting. In fact, I'm going out to London this weekend. If you want to come too, let me know. If you want to come and go to the screening, it's this Sunday. So
Oh,
I'll
bro,
be.
100%.
Yeah. I
I'll
got I
chat
got
to
a
the
couple
missus.
boys. We can roll up in there deep, man. I got a couple of us rolling in deep. So um
Oh shit.
uh, to the film festival and have a good time. But love acting. It's my next thing. It's the reason why I won't come out of retirement from fighting. Put it that way. I always tell fighters when you retire, find something new. Luckily
Mm.
for me, I had been acting before got done fighting, so it was just okay. No more fighting. Put all my eggs back. Put all my eggs into acting. So here I am.
Yeah, and that's another topic for another day in terms of fighters retiring and not having that next thing for them, and they find themselves getting itchy knuckles and wanting to get back in there to pay the bills, and it's kind of sad to see. But it's either paying the bills or trying to get out their current UFC contract that's just frozen to then go on and you do misfits and all that sort of stuff. So it's a crazy sort of time for fighters these days. Another question was just, what do you think what do you think of Tough nowadays? Since it operates way different since you were a contestant on it. Good question.
I had so many traumatic memories of being on top. I mean, it was a great time. Don't get me wrong. We filmed this back in 2005 or 2006, one of the two. Um, it was the tough four I was on, but it was so traumatic to me in a way that I have never watched the full season up until Tough 32, I think it was. And I had to because I did the post show on ESPN Plus. It was McGregor and Chandler. So I had to watch every episode. But it was so traumatic to me watching it, thinking, oh my God, I remember being in this damn house. It sucks. But watching the show, it's I personally think it's lost some of its luster. I think that the UFC has better programming. I think it's lost some of its luster, but In terms of finding good fighters, I don't, with the exception of Contender Series, I don't think there's a better way to find good fighters or to expose fighters that don't want to be fighters. You will
Mm.
like, and that's the truth. Like if you're in that house and by week 3 you want to get out of that house, you're not a fighter.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You're not a fighter. You will be exposed in a week if you don't want to be a real fighter. And that's what's good about Tough is it exposes a lot of wannabe fighters.
Yeah, that was what was great about it back in the day, when it was half fighters who could really go on and pursue a career in the UFC, and then half that were there as entertainers that happened to also be fighters as well. Wes
Yeah, yeah.
Sims, I mean, all right, Wes Sims did go on to the UFC, but he was a bit of a character when he was on the show. I can't remember which season that was now.
Oh, that was a long
So
time ago.
a long time
Yeah, I
ago.
don't trust me. I don't expect you to remember that one. I don't even remember which season that was. But yeah, that was a minute ago.
That was wild. That was wild. All right, guys, keep your questions coming. We're going to get into a game in a sec. Good evening, Red Wolf MMA. Who says, good evening, JK, and the man himself, Din. Yeah, get your questions in. I'm going to move on to a game we've done now, which I think you guys are going to absolutely love. But before we get into this game, I've got to get a promise from you, Din, because in so we take our time. I take the time to actually come up with these games. We have a meeting, and when a fighter or a personality is booked on the show, and we're going to do a game, we brainstorm and we think of what we're going to do. One of the top ideas that I had wouldn't be the same if we did it remotely like this, right? And I think it would require some in-person flow,
Yeah.
So next time you're over in the UFC for the UFC in London, right? We got to make this happen. The fans of the channel are aware of my impressions, right, of
Mm-hmm.
fighters. They will also know about your impressions as well. So I'm thinking we got to go head to head, impression off, almost like Top Trump style. We get the wigs out.
I'm
We do draw.
100% in.
We get the fans around us. They get to vote.
I am 1000% in. I know the UFC is going to London. I don't know. I can't remember when, but I know they're going next year sometime. So,
Is it
um,
March?
I hope so. I hope sooner
Usually
rather than
March.
later. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure. Again, like productions, they don't like to tell anybody anything because they like to keep everything really tight. But I do know that at some point next year, the UFC is coming to London. Hopefully, I get on that card. They're always pretty good about sending me to London, so we can do it right outside the O2 Arena, baby. Wherever we go,
Let's do it.
yeah, right after weigh-ins. You know what I'm saying? We can get it in with the fans out there. We can get it in.
Yes. Yes. Mate, it's gotta happen. The folks are gonna love it. Yeah, we'll think logistics on this end. We'll get microphones, speakers, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll go head to head. How many do you reckon you can do of people, personalities, fighters, or whatever?
Um,
I don't think
I don't know.
without revealing.
I mean, I got enough time to work on a few, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's
yeah, you
plenty
know
of
what I'm saying.
time.
I may only could do a couple now, but I can work on a few to where by the time we get it's time to do it, I can have them down, and that would be ideal for me is to make sure I deliver. So give me some time to work on a few, and however many you want me to do, I'll just work on them.
All right, sweet. I think that sounds like a deal. I think we can do 4 to 5 potentially. I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah,
confident on.
I'm in. I love it. I love the idea.
All right, okay, cool. I love that. Well, for the game that we've got now, then, if I head on to the game scene, then. Now, this game is called Which Tweet is Real? So there's 6 rounds, and each round has got 3 tweets, and it's your job to guess which of the 3 is real that I'm giving you. Does that sound pretty easy to you?
Yeah, that sounds very easy to me. And are you gonna? You send the tweet and who wrote it?
I'm not gonna say who wrote them. So one of them's clearly real. One of the others, my producers, have filled in there for you.
Okay.
So let's see how this goes, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so round one. Number A is you have enough money to make me strip for you, in quotation marks. Dean Thomas flirting, question mark. I guess, question mark. Hashtag KC50. So that's the first one. B, we've got Dean Thomas is the type of guy to go on hot ones just to drink milk. Or C, Dean Thomas would slap the booger sugar out of Connor's nose. Which one, A, B, or C,
I
is
know
the real
exactly
tweet?
what it is. It's A. It's got to be A because
It is right. That's right. A is the
because I
right.
said that. I didn't write the tweet, but the context behind that is that the one of the guys who fought on Karate Combat, who's like super rich, like billionaire, fought, and I'm like, why are you doing this? You have enough money to make me strip for you. So yeah, that. And then I told him afterwards, I said, man, don't take that literally, man, because you do not have enough money to make me strip for you. But it was all for the cameras. But yeah, that's 100% that was A.
All right, okay, so that was the first round. Went off to an easy start. One in the books. Let's move on then to the second round. So, second round, we've got A. Dean Thomas is spot on there. Paddy Pimlet needs subtitles. B. Dean Thomas is the most underrated man in the UFC. Or C. Wow. Dean Thomas, I would. Don't know what that's meant to mean.
R word.
A, B, or C?
Because I know how fans are, and if the R word is what I think they mean with the R word, I'm gonna go to C. Is the real tweet.
Or are you just blowing smoke up your own ass?
I really think C is the one.
C. Well, Dean Thomas, I would. Well, I can reveal that is incorrect.
Oh.
It was actually B.
B.
Dean Thomas is the most underrated man in the UFC. So I gave you a positive one there.
Oh my goodness. I wonder who said that. Whoever
Positive
said that,
tweets on Twitter.
I appreciate you. Totally appreciate you.
All right, tough stuff. Okay, now it's going to get a bit gnarly. All right. Number 3, third round. A, if Carl Uno never existed, Dean Thomas would have been a UFC champion. B, Dean Thomas and Matt Serra should run the UFC when Dana White retires. Or C, fire Joe Rogan from UFC at UFC. He's finished, predictable and repetitive. Let's get Dean Thomas.
That's very elaborate.
Isn't it?
I almost want to say C just because of how elaborate that one was. Like no one's going to contrive that for the sake of a game. But I like B just because I want to see that one be a real thing. I'm going to go B.
What, you actually go with B?
Yes, I'm going with
Fine
B.
answer. All right.
Me and Matt Serra running the UFC. That's the real tweet.
Well, you got it wrong. That was wrong. You were close. It was actually C.
It was C.
It was C.
I should have known because how elaborate that was and how much people hate on the analysts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's too much hate out there. I mean, I picked the most positive ones first, but just ease it in.
Yeah, I should have known. The people hate on Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, Chael Sonnen, and Michael Bisping. I mean, they hate them all.
Yeah.
That's why it's easier for me. It's why it's easier for me to not say nothing except for every couple of fights, because I don't say enough for people to hate on me.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing, a good way to go about it, to be honest. All right, so one right so far out of three, but let's keep it
Oh,
going. Let's see if we can
all right,
get some more right.
yeah.
Okay, fourth round. I'd be this is good. I'd be shit scared if Dean Thomas was my father-in-law. That's A. B. Dean Thomas is so funny, he makes Joe Rogan look like Gru from Despicable Me. Or C. Dean Thomas, coach, analyst, be like on hashtag UFC 307, and then shows Family Guy weatherman saying it's raining sideways, and that's the image.
Say that one again. What was the words of that?
It's a little bit, yeah. Dean Thomas, coach, analyst, be like on UFC
Oh, okay.
307, and then imagine the picture of the guy from the weatherman from Family Guy who says it's raining sideways.
Oh, this is a tough one.
This is a tough one. You've got A, I'd be shit scared if Dean Thomas was my father-in-law. B, Dean Thomas is so funny, he makes Joe Rogan look like Gru from Despicable Me. This is a tough one.
This one is a tough one. It's either B or C. But I'm gonna go C of again how elaborate that was.
All right, yeah, that is the correct answer. Of course, yeah, it made sense really. It was quite very detailed, to be fair.
Yeah.
So we're moving in 2-2 now.
Okay.
Not bad. We've got another 2 rounds left. Let's see how we get on with these ones. Round 5. We've got A. Dean Thomas really gets paid to watch the fights and make a 12-second comment every now and again. Hashtag UFC Long Island. B. I feel for Dean Thomas. He has to put up with Matt Serra every so often. Or C. I think Dean Thomas would have a better rap career than Tyron Woodley.
I'm not gonna go there. I'm definitely not gonna say that. A.
A, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Yes.
Spot on.
Yes, I'm in the winners column.
4-3. Love
Yes.
that. Dean Thomas really gets paid to watch the fights and make a 12-second comment every now and again. I mean, it goes back to what you said almost a minute ago, really, right?
Yeah.
Being seen every now and again.
They hated it, and now they're hating on that.
Yeah.
They're hating on that.
I mean, to be fair, jealousy, I mean, is a wonderful thing, right? You know, I guess it kind of makes most people probably would be jealous by that.
Well, to be fair, in my defense, like I have to make a comment about something that they haven't seen yet.
Ooh, what's that?
So that's a little bit more difficult because they're talking the whole time.
That's true.
And I have to find something that they haven't spoken about yet. So.
In fact, one of my questions that I missed out actually was kind of how does that all go about behind the scenes? Because are they like, do you get a bit of a prompt, or are you just like, right, guys, I've got something, let's go, bring me in.
Kind of a little bit of both. Like if I have something, I'll just say, yo, get me in right now. Or sometimes I'm like, hey, you ready to come in? And I go, yeah, bring me in.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just kind of both, you know, when I think a lot of it has to do with, especially with the commentary. And what I've been trying to do, because the biggest complaint with commentary is that it's biased. And when you're in their seat, they don't recognize it because they're just telling the story. They're talking like just telling the story. They don't realize if they're being biased. But I'm listening, and then sometimes I like to give another perspective so that it's not as biased, or you know, to kind of open some things up for them. So, I'm just listening to them to make sure that if I can provide something for them, and that is a different perspective, then maybe they can shift the way they see the fight.
Well, it's definitely a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's hard for them because they're just talking to their buddies, and they're just like, yeah, man, we see this, we see that, and then they get on a storyline or a narrative, and then they're just talking about that narrative, and then everybody at home's like, oh my god, they keep talking about fighter A, and like this guy's so great, and fighters hate it, and so if I can, I'll try to jump in and offer a different side to think about.
Love that. There you go. Some behind the scenes info there, folks, for you guys at home. Let's move on then. Well, I've lost where I'm at now. We are
Last one.
What's the score? Yeah, last one. So the score
I'm
is
3-2.
3-2, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Last one then. This one's a fun one. We got A, Dean Thomas looking like a substitute teacher. Hashtag UFC Denver. B, no, I heard you're one of the best dressed out of the whole broadcast team. That's what John Anna keeps on saying, right?
I wear colors that no one else can get away with.
Mm.
Black guys can wear colors that most people can't get away with.
This is true. That's probably what, yeah. Oh, B, shout out to Dean Thomas. He puts the anal in analysis.
I love it.
Or C, this was a good one. If I could cast an MMA live action Ninja Turtles film, I'd cast Khalil Roundtree as Leonardo, Joaquin Buckley as Raphael, Yoel Romero as Michelangelo, William Knight as Donatello, and Dean Thomas as Master Splinter.
100% C.
You go with C.
Yes.
Oh, these producers, man. I mean, that's crazy. Final answer, yeah? Locking it in for the last round.
Final answer.
Oh. It was actually A.
Oh, man. Which one was A? Oh, best just dressed like a substitute teacher?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny about that. And I didn't think that would be a real one. And the reason why I didn't think that would be a real one is because I went to a UFC once and Dana White looked at me and said, "You look like a substitute teacher." So, and I know he didn't tweet that. So I was thinking there's no way somebody actually tweeted that.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, that's funny. They did. I mean, that's crazy. That's two people now have kind of said that. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, what is it about substitutes? What is the substitute teacher look? Because I always thought it was like shirt on, jumper over the top, right, and collar coming out the top.
Well, I kind of do that sometimes. Like I'll wear a sweater. Well, like if I wear a sweater with a tie, that always comes across as substitute teacher look. And I do that on purpose, actually, because more than anything else, like I'm an analyst by definition, but I like to think of myself as a teacher. I'm a teacher. Like I'm teaching you something. So I do that on purpose, like, or professor. Like I do that on purpose.
It's the look. Yeah, it's just it's key, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my look. I like to think of myself as a professor and not a coach or even a broadcaster. Well, I'm not a journalist, put it that way. I'll tell you right now, like I do journalistic things sometimes by default, but I am not a journalist. I tell everybody that. Don't ever think I'm a journalist. I have no journalistic integrity. So don't ever put me in the box of a journalist.
Way forward is it? It's not what you kind of cut your teeth in at the end of the day, did you?
No.
All right. Well, that basically wraps up our game then. 3-3, not too bad, right?
Yeah, I can live with that. I like being in the middle of things.
That's it.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
And just off the record, I don't have a producer planning on that. I wrote all that.
Well, I appreciate the honesty.
I mean, they could have been tweets, but you know, I think some of the ones I had in there were much better than some of the ones you'd find on Twitter anyway. Yeah,
well, you had me fooled. You had me fooled, and you had me wishfully thinking on at least 3 of them that hopefully that those 3 were out there in the Twitter world circulating.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some chats in before we wrap this up. We've got a few minutes left with Dean's time. Red Wolf said, Dean, what was your prediction for Jones versus Stipe? And do you think the winner could stay on to fight Aspinall? I mean, we covered a little bit on Aspinall situation earlier, and what is your opinion on the whole? Yeah, so what was your opinion on the whole Aspinall defending his interim title? I guess that's just a little bit different. Yeah, prediction on Jones
Right.
Stipe.
So
I think
my
that's the same.
prediction on Jones and Stipe, I think Jones is going to beat him up. I think he's going to eventually get him down. I think it's going to pick him apart for a little bit, and then eventually get him down and probably stop him with like ground and pound or maybe choke him out or something. Um, but I think Jones wins that fight. Tom Aspinall just he's happens to be in the wrong place of history right now, like at the wrong time. It's just, I mean, he's a guy who likes to sit at home and play with his kids, and that's not what fight fans want for their heavyweight champion. They want their
Mm.
heavyweight champion to be like John Jones, like it's just a scumbag who, who does, parties, like, or like a mean dude. Like Tom Aspinall is a nice guy. We don't want that as a heavyweight champion. So him defending his belt as an interim champion is actually disrespectful, but it's necessary because he needs to fight.
Mm.
So I wish he timing was right for him that we could really appreciate him as the greatest fighter in the world. We all know that, but just he's in a time of history right now of MMA where, man, we like drama.
Yeah,
John
it
Jones
is
is drama.
puzzled.
We want some drama.
That's it. Maybe, yeah, maybe less of the car crash type drama, but
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, but any drama is good drama. I mean, for it gives us something to talk about.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, sport would be pretty dull, I guess, in a way. In some respects, anyways,
Yeah.
from a reality TV standpoint. Um, Captain Ralph, welcome on in, buddy. Who says sorry I'm late, but I have a question for Dean Thomas. What was your most difficult match on your UFC career after the Ultimate Fighter finale? Wow.
No, I mean that's a pretty easy question for me. I think that fighting Josh Neer was pretty difficult. He was just coming down from 170, and I thought he was going to be really weak for making the weight cut. And I remember punching him as hard as I could, and him just walking right through it. And then he was beating me up with elbows for a while. So I mean that was very difficult night for me, like getting over that. Like it was a pretty long 15 minutes. Oh my God, is it over yet? but but yeah, difficult fight against Josh Neer. He was a real one.
Of course, you fought BJ Penn as well back in the day.
That was my very first UFC fight
That was your first, yeah. That's wild.
back in
Good fight.
2001.
Woo!
Yeah,
Damn. Wonder how old most of you lot would be. In fact, I can't think of how old I was at the time. I'm no good at math, but I'm 30 at the moment.
yeah, you
Folks at
were
home can do the math.
you were pretty young.
Yeah, in sport then. George Murray says verbal contract has been agreed. I've been suits, Mr. Thomas. You better hold up your end, otherwise, a Mr. Spectre will be calling you. I don't know what you're on about that. Red Wolf says, good point. Aspinall is a nice guy. He's like heavyweight GSP. And yeah, I think people have been making that comparisons quite a bit, haven't they?
Perhaps he's like a heavyweight GSP, but at least like GSP had the belt and was doing his thing. He had the quote unquote real belt, so it wasn't a thing, and he had to defend that against the next best guys. But with John Jones out there who has the belt and Tom having the interim belt, it just really puts him in limbo.
Yeah, and the welterweight division wasn't as stacked as what it was when he first won it. It was, the kind of the triangle between him, Matt Serra, and Matt Hughes for a little while, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Yeah, that's true. All right, cool. Awesome stuff in the chats, guys. Thank you very much for your questions. You guys have been awesome as always. Make sure you give Dean a cheeky little follow on the Instagram handle, which I had on a previous scene, which I believe is at Dean Thomas.
That's it. At
Simple
Dean
as.
Thomas, Dean spelled Din Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you don't use Twitter, do you?
I'm on Twitter, but I don't use Twitter for the same reasons why
Nah.
it's not good for my mental health.
No,
I've been there
that's
arguing with
fair enough.
people, man. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Just ain't got the energy. All right, cool, awesome stuff. Yeah, thanks as always. Thanks for coming on to today where you are.
It's my pleasure,
Um,
man. I appreciate you for having me on, and let's chop it up again, man. We have keep me posted on the characters that we're going to do when I'm out in London, and
oh
also too, if you get an opportunity this weekend, man, I'll see you out in London at the film festival.
yeah, 100%. I'll let you know. I'll see what some of the other guys are doing. I can't remember. I'll check with the missus, the boss first, because I can't
Yeah.
remember if we've planned anything on Sunday. I don't think we have, anyways. But if not, yeah, we'll come check it out in Shoreditch.
Cool, man. Cool.
What's your favorite food?
Um, I like cheeseburgers.
Cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. There's a good burger place called Patty and Bun. I know
Patty and
around. They
bun.
got Patty and Bun. Yeah. There's yeah, I haven't had them in a while actually. Um, there's so many cool food places in London, man. I find them all basically from Instagram. That's what Instagram's good for.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah.
finding good
Find a
food
food place.
places.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
definitely enjoy myself in terms of eating when I'm in London. So I'm never shy on that. Go out there and eat me some fish and chips too, maybe.
Ah, classic fish. Yeah, you might get us the odd shop somewhere around. I mean, usually you find those out on the coast sort of way, but there might be the odd place in London. Yeah,
So,
yeah. No,
all right,
absolutely.
my
All right,
man. We'll
I'll let you
catch up
know.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
much
all right,
appreciated for
homie.
coming on,
Have a
man.
good one. Peace.
Peace out. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll speak soon, buddy. Ciao for now, all. Bye bye.